Mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir et bienvenue à notre émission Forum communautaire. L'émission qui vous promet d'être toujours à l'avant-garde de l'actualité, la politique, l'économie, l'éducation, la science, la santé, la loi et le divertissement. Forum communautaire est une émission télévisée tous les dimanches de 4h30 à 5h30 sur Cuenca Vision, WCEA, chaîne 58, Comcast 729. Notre ambition, c'est d'être vos yeux, vos pieds ainsi que vos oreilles, espérant de partager avec vous le meilleur. Pour vos publicités, questions, commentaires et suggestions, consultez-nous au 617 839 71 91 ou par courrier électronique jean-claude_sanon@yahoo.com. D'ores et déjà, nous vous souhaitons une bonne audition. Nous allons passer à une courte pause publicitaire. You may wonder why do I say it's always a pleasure. Of course it's always a pleasure. That's what I do for a living. I enjoy it, and every single moment of it that I come into your house, it is a great pleasure. And when I bring you the bridge, I bring you on top of the bridge to really connect with the people who are doing something in the city, whether it's a politician, whether it's an entertainer, an activist, you name it. They have something to share with you, and this is why I bring them on. And when I bring them on, you learn something, you partake into it, and it really gives you kudos to really move on with your life and know what is going on around you. Because when you don't know what's going on, guess what? Somebody's going to make the decisions for you, and you won't be a part of it. That's the purpose of the bridge. The bridge is a collaboration of MCTV of Boston, Radio Concord, Forum Communautaire, Info80.com, and all the mediums that comes together to do this on a weekly basis. We care for you, and we really want to bring you what's the best. I have the best in the house for you today. You want to know why? She's got the greatest laughter that you can enjoy, that can intimidate you when she smiles. So this is our guest for today, Liz Miranda, who is here with us. She's a state rep at the moment, but she's planning on running for, she's already a candidate announced for the second Suffolk coming up soon. We're going to take a break. When we come back, keep an eye out for her. She'll be with us in a few.
Mes amis, mais James, il était étonné pour l'apprendre que tension li haut. Ça qui a fait lui fait tension. Qui donc, il était parlé avec docteur au sujet yon chimè qui bon pour santé pour ka baisser tension. Il était suspend fumer, ça qui fait une grosse différence dans gens qu'elle bat en général. Il diminue quantité sel tout et puis si veille étiquette sous manger qui indique gros quantité sel. En plus de ça, il marche 30 minutes 5 fois par semaine régulièrement. Tout bagage ça qui bon pour santé, pas de facile. Même baisser tension, t'es vos efforts si là. Joindre plus d'informations concernant chimè qui bon pour santé ça, pour joindre aide pour casser suspend fumer, relais 1-800 784 46 69.
Avant-garde. Nous devons toujours à l'avant-garde. Pour ou même qu'à l'avant-garde, consultez Jean-Claude Sanon n'importe qui l'est dans 617 839 71 91. Toujours à l'avant-garde avec Jean-Claude Sanon, nous offrons tout service immigration avec accident. Nous remplissons toute forme, nous cas météo en forme. L'aide pour toute occasion ou circonstance, interprétation médicale légale, caille docteur dans l'hôpital, caille avocat dans le tribunal, sans compter immigration, traduction toute qualité papier, certificat, acte de naissance, de mariage, de décès.
Service de traduction, c'est même joie. L'aide pour demande de visa devant ambassade, discours, notary public, officier d'état civil pour marier ou.
Real estate, vendre à acheter caille, mettre cérémonie pour toute occasion, c'est Jean-Claude Sanon. Non affilié à un bureau avocat en Haïti qui travaille serré à Archives nationales et tribunal. Service vite passé vent pour jugement acte de naissance tardive, acte de naissance tenant lieu, acte de décès, acte de divorce. Nous fait divorce tout sans qu'on pas besoin de payer ticket pour l'Haïti. Acte d'adoption, acte de mariage, civil ou religieux, extrait acte de naissance et de mariage, rapido presto, bon bagage sans problème devant immigration reconnu par l'État haïtien. Sans faux pas, consultez Avant-garde. Jean-Claude Sanon dans 617 839 71 91.
Nous opérons seulement sur rendez-vous dans
le nouveau local, numéro 11 Rexford Street, Mattapan, Mass. It is another welcome, and it is a bridge that you are on with your host, Jean-Claude Sanon. My guest is already in the house. She's settled, and she's got a lot to share. She's got a past tense and a present tense, and she's also going to be moving into some actions. This dome that you are looking on the back of you, that's where she, I would not say reside, but this is where she performs a task on a daily basis. And the weekend that just went by, she was phenomenal with a group of other leaders who are really standing us for us. This is why it's important for you to elect people who really have lived the lifestyle of yourself so that they can really represent you correctly in the state house. Because if you don't do that, if you keep on electing folks who doesn't know anything about you really, you are in deep trouble. And I'll tell you one thing, don't just be a voter that just go out there and vote somebody because of namesake, recognition here and there, a lot of money and so on and so forth. And sometimes, I'll tell you one thing, after the elections, they're gone and you don't see them anymore. This woman has been in the field. She has been an activist. She has done so much. So let's introduce to us today in the house, we're going to roll the red carpet for Liz Miranda. How are you, my dear?
Thank you. Bonjour, bon dia, buenos dias, good morning. Actually, might be good afternoon at this point. I'm State Representative Liz Miranda from the 5th Suffolk District. And before I go into anything that you ask me, I just wanted to make sure I acknowledge the Haitian community. I've always been in the Haitian community, being a first-generation Black immigrant, being Cabo Verdean myself. And I know that we would not be here today as Black people, Black immigrants or Black African Americans, if it wasn't for the Haitian people. So I want to acknowledge that today because it is the first day of Black history, and Black history is for the diaspora. It's not just for the Americas.
Can't wait for that unification because it has to be done. It must be done. That's the only way of strengthening ourselves. Liz Miranda, for those who are watching and who probably have heard of the name for the first time and who doesn't know who she is, and don't just give me the whole entire smash about you, but give us the best, the essential.
I am a daughter of a teen immigrant mom who came here in the 70s. You mentioned you came in 1975. My mom came in 1976 after the war between Portugal, the colonizer of Cape Verde. And I grew up in the Dudley Triangle, a community that was beautiful and diverse, but also went through its challenges. We were the most environmentally unjust community. We had a lot of poverty, we had a lot of gun violence, and the drug epidemic was really at the center of our community. But that didn't stop the people from my community to fight back. And I have a lot of memories being 13 years old, getting involved with DSNI, the Nubian Roots Youth Committee, a program called My Town, Orchard Park Teen Center, and Teen Empowerment. And I went on from a Boston public high school. I went to the John D. O'Brien. I know a lot of the folks who are watching have children that have either gone to a Boston public high school. It could have been Boston Latin or Latin school, or the O'Brien. And then I went to Wellesley. And when I went to Wellesley, that's where my life really changed, because I decided to come back to my community to make a difference. And so I've been for 20 years working brick by brick, neighborhood to neighborhood, block by block, people to people, as a community organizer in a bunch of different fields. And 4 years ago, I ran for office. I ran for office because at the time, there was only one Black woman in the entire State House. And although Cabo Verdeans have been here for 200 years, and that we had a Senator Vinnie Di Macedo, he was not a woman. And so I became the first woman of Cape Verdean descent in Massachusetts, full Cape Verdean descent, to run and win. And I'm really here today to say that I'll be the next Senator, the 2nd Suffolk, because as a person who's experienced, who's been effective as a leader in the Massachusetts House, you just mentioned jail-based voting that passed. It's my 4th bill, or 4th amendment to become a bill that has passed in my 3 years that I've been at the State House. And I'm a community-centric leader. I believe in people and the power of people who look like me to make decisions for themselves. And so I'm happy to be here because leadership is not just about titles. It's about your vision. And I think the community, now the 2nd Suffolk includes all of Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, into Hyde Park, and parts of Jamaica Plain and Mission Hill. The people who are there are suffering from the things that I work on, addressing racial disparities in the criminal legal system, the racial wealth gap that's kept our communities poorer, redlining. You talk about folks not being able to buy homes or afford to live where they love. And lastly, the issues around birthing justice. Although I'm not a mom yet, I consider myself a community mom, the issues of protecting Black women is at the forefront of my policy agenda.
A lot of accomplishment and in such a short time. So you could expect a hell of a lot more as far as when she gets to become the senator. Some of the things that you have accomplished, can you put a stone on them for me in terms of during your tenure as a rep?
So I entered the State House with a clear mandate. In 2017, my youngest brother, Michael, was killed. And when Michael was killed, thank you for that, it's just my baby brother. And he wasn't the first person I had lost to gun violence, but it probably was the thing that impacted me the most. And I was sitting at my dream job. I was an executive director of a nonprofit called the Hawthorne. And something came over me that said I had to do more and do better. That although I'm a resourced person, having lost my brother made me realize that I really needed to be in the halls of government. And the halls of government were important because they were working on gun reform bills. They were making decisions about what money and how much money goes into communities like mine. And so I ran, I won every ward and precinct, set a record of over 10,000 votes. I was looking at Marie St. Fleurs, also a proud Haitian American woman who was my predecessor 3 years.
And coming from the same area as you do,
yeah,
because she
off Dudley Street.
Right, yeah.
And so I was looking at her tenure. I've had Evandro Carvalho, who's also a friend of the Haitian community, had Carlos Enriquez, had Charlotte Golovicki and Marie to look to, and said, I'm worthy, I'm enough, and I belong at the State House. They need more survivors. And so I work a lot on gun violence, mental health, and trauma. I work a lot on immigrant rights. I am the filer of the Safe Communities Act and have been working closely with the Drive-In Mass Forward bill. I also, most recently, through the ARPA money, which was the federal money, was able to work with Rep. Brandy Fluker-Oakley and the Asian Caucus to get $8 million for Haitian refugees, because we know that the issue of the racism and the discrimination against Haitian people is alive and well. And what happened at the border happens in Massachusetts, and we got to say no more. And so immigrant rights are a big part of my agenda. And the last two things that I focus a lot on, when we talk about climate, people oftentimes wonder why a Black woman would be at the center of that. I come from a community that had so much pollution. And in our communities, whether it's Mattapan or Dorchester, Roxbury, or Hyde Park, we deserve clean air, water, and land. But we don't have that because we were polluted. And so I work a lot on environmental justice to make sure that when someone's building something in our community, they're taking into consideration that they could be polluting us further. And that pollution has consequences. We have 5 times the asthma rate in Roxbury as the rest of the city. Black people, us, die 30 years ahead of white people in the city of Boston. And that's all because of environmental injustice.
So we are poor in every sense of the word.
We're very rich. Yeah, we're rich in culture.
Economically, because of all the abuse that has been done in terms of the way that wealth gap disparity is into the city. But also, you just mentioned health-wise, we're also being exploited in a sense, one way or the other. You just mentioned something here that's very important, and which was beaming out last week with the Haitian media in terms of that $8 million.
Yeah.
It was my understanding when this was brought up into the state rep, there were quite a few of them who were against it.
Well,
they did not support it.
Well, I would use the more affirmative way of looking at it. A lot of people don't know that the State House, in particular in the House of Representatives, has 200 people, right? And so every time you're doing something, you're trying to convince a little more than half to approve what you believe is an important issue. Now, it started off as a line item for $20 million, I believe, for Afghan refugees.
Right.
And when I saw that, and Rep. Fluker-Oakley saw that, and other folks in the Asian American caucus, including and probably led by Ms. Howard out of Lowell, I said to myself, you got to carve out for our Haitian people. Because although there's a huge Haitian population here, it's the 3rd largest community in North America, we want to make sure that we also set aside, because what was happening to the Haitian people was also not just about ethnicity, it's about race. Black immigrants are treated very unfairly, not only in America as a whole. Right. Massachusetts loves to say that they're a liberal bastion, but that's not true.
Oh, please, have mercy. And they took credit for so much that they didn't even accomplish. The first abolitionists and so on and so forth. These are all baloney.
They've changed the narrative, and I think what's important for your listeners and the people watching to know is that I walked in with the mandate from day one. I filed the Safe Communities Act, which was one of the hardest bills. I followed all the hardest bills, ending life without parole, because we sentenced Black people to jail 8 times the rate of white people here in Massachusetts. And so all the bills that I've done, I did it because of the lived experience. I still live off Dudley Street. It's not a wealthy community. My mother worked in a factory. My father worked in a factory. My mother is still a cook in Boston hotels. So when we talk about frontline workers, we're talking about my people. We're talking about our people.
Right.
And so we're hard workers. So the economic racial wealth gap is not because we're not working hard enough. I know many Haitians and many Cape Verdeans that work 2-3 jobs just to make ends meet. So we're working hard, but we need to fight the structural racism that is in government. It's still in government, even though there's 4 black women at the State House right now. A 5th one, sorry, with Senator Lydia Edwards. Congratulations to Senator Edwards out of East Boston. We have a long way to go. And that's why I want to run so that we can do this work together.
No, I just wanted to pinpoint because there are folks that we have elected into office, and sometimes when they're making decisions on our behalf, and that is not good for us, we need to pinpoint at them and hold them accountable. So this is why I brought this options, because I understood that there were some difficulties. And we're not going to be going into the list right now of those that didn't vote, but however, we'll touch up on that, because the last vote that you were really pretty strong at, and you really stood your ground together with a lot of others. I think that's very important, folks, is to get to know. Now, these are being excellent. There is one thing that I've admired, and I'm willing to say it on television, is that you have always tried to support other folks who are running, and especially people of color very often. We've seen you, your name is always next to them. You don't give it second thought as far as endorsing this person, endorsing that person, is to really operate the change that needs to be. Why is Liz Miranda like that? Because it's not typical politicians at all.
I think one, it comes from my community organizing background. I know that the sum of all of us is not one of us. And so when I work on bills, all my bills have community advisory councils. They help me write their bills. And so when you go and endorse someone, you have to give your time, talent, and treasure. When I ran, time, talent, and treasure.
Very, very important. I don't want lip service, and which is what they have done very often. Go ahead.
You don't want to just put an image out there and say, well, I'm supporting you. And so for me in the last race, I stayed out of the primary, but I then supported Mayor Wu. I also supported the 3 Cabo Verdean candidates, Evandro Carvalho, Carlo Montero, and Tanya Anderson Fernandez. 1, because of my background, but 2, I really believed in them. And when you believe in them, when I ran, I remember it was quiet. I didn't have a lot of endorsements. I didn't have the unions, but I kept my head down, and my family and friends and community members helped me get to the goal. And so I knew that I could contribute by offering my time. So it's valuable. I'm a very busy rep, but also utilizing things that I knew. I had a good team. I had great resources on the ground. I knew Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, and Hyde Park and JP very well. I'm born and raised in the city of Boston. I went to school with people who live in these communities. They're supporters of mine in these communities. And so I want folks to know that when I decide to do something, I put the full force, and that's what I did. I took valuable time in the summer to put all of my energy in trying to get folks elected. And 2 out of 4 got through, but the important piece, I also supported Ruth C. Louis-Jean. That's been my friend for 25 years. And to see her as the first Haitian American, and then see Tanya as the first Cape Verdean and first Muslim and first undocumented person to get her citizenship to win, that is glory to our communities. When one of us steps forward, all of us step forward. So that's some of the reasons why I spend so much time building leadership, also not of people of color, but also women. Because in the State House, we only have 60 legislators who are women, so we're a third. We're a third. We still haven't reached equal representation.
I have a very weird and odd questions for you. There's a mentality right now in Massachusetts. It's supposed to be just only women that runs for public office. Do you think that is going the right way? I understood that the disenfranchised that exists because we had too many male into office. This is understandable. But however, what about the young man who's inspiring to become a politician and stuff? Should he also be considered, or is it supposed to be just about?
No. You know, I think that someone said to me earlier in the week that the cost of black girl magic, what does it cost black men? And I had a really robust conversation. I've always had black men who had my back, and I've also had theirs. That's why I work so much on the criminal legal system. A lot of people ask me, why is that my number 1 priority? And the reason why is because the corridor, the Blue Halav corridor, which I have a piece of now and hope to have all of it in a couple months, is the most over-policed, over-incarcerated corridor, but we're still not safe. When we talk about gun violence, who does it disproportionately impact? Black and brown men in particular. And so for me, I think we should have qualified candidates, regardless of gender, regardless of race. But we know that there was a gaping hole in women. And now the city council is tipped. We hope to tip the state house. But I always support people. If they're great, Evandro Cavallo was great. Brian Worrell, Councilor Worrell won in that race, but we're working closely together in the issue. So I say to everyone that although we've been highlighting Black women, because in 2008, we've come a long way. Yes. But in 2008, Ayanna Pressley was the first. And that wasn't okay then, and it's not okay now. And I think if we can unify among the Black diaspora and also unify with the races, we'll get further gains. Because when we're together, we win. You know, you hear that slogan, when we fight, we win. And I think we can get more Black men from the diaspora into office if we work together.
Sonia Chindia is making a decision. She's going to be running for governor. There will be at least thus far 3 women and 2 men. And the 3 of them happens to be women of color. But however, 2 of them, okay, I'm sorry, yeah. The latest person that came into the race is Maura Haley, who happens to have more money than everybody else and has run statewide. But anyhow, she's leaving a gap, and that gap that you are in the process of getting into, it seems like it's not just going to be under you, there's probably going to be many more. Why this decisions that you are taking the step on right now to run for the state senate?
First, I'm experienced, I'm effective, I've accomplished a lot in my 3 years at the State House. Okay. The third is that I'm a community-centric leader, and I really believe that this district wants someone like me, someone that's not just gonna talk about policy and budget at the State House, but be deep in community. I have deep roots in the entire 2nd Suffolk. It's my lifelong home. I've been here since 1980, June 29th, and I've always been turning talk into action. So I've been an active resident. Since I was 13 years old, I've been in community organizations, fighting for justice and equity. And I think that this experience that I bring, not I think, I know, let me actually say that, I know that the community residents really desire. They desire us to not just have pins and suits and talk about policy, but actually be like, this is what I've done for you, this is what I've done with you, and this is what I'll continue to do with you. And so I think that I'm the best candidate for the 2nd Suffolk because I represent the 2nd Suffolk, not only through my race, through my gender, or through the work that I've done, but I think that now folks are really ready for someone to focus on the criminal legal system, to focus on climate change by including environmental justice communities, focus on housing. It's not only about rent stabilization and more affordable housing, it's also about, can people have the jobs that they need to be able to afford to live in Boston? The saddest statistic I've recently heard is that we've lost about a 13% drop in Black people in the city of Boston. Yeah, well, they can't afford the housing, they can't afford the rent, and their jobs have wage stagnation, right? We got to get people into better jobs and close the racial wealth gap. And so for me, it's about belonging. And I'm so excited to even be with you here today because a lot of people have said, well, why don't you stay in the House? You had a phenomenal track record in the House of Representatives. It's because when this race is over, the person who becomes the senator of the 2nd Suffolk will also largely drive the Black agenda for the entire state because it will be one of 2 senators that will be Black. And because I come from a Black immigrant background, I also bring that with me. Which is a plus, and certainly because that immigrant roots will certainly help and also help people connect with you much closer than ever before. So there is a big difference between being a state rep and a senator. Now, elaborate for us between the 2 positions. How much of a difference is it? So it's 4 times as much territory. So right now I have the 5th Suffolk, which are parts of Roxbury and Dorchester that's in this 2nd Suffolk, but it's much more territory. So this new map actually has it going from Roxbury to Hyde Park through Cleary Square. It has a bunch of Jamaica Plain, including Eggleston Square, and Hyde Square, and then it has Mission Hill, and then a little bit of the Fenway. So it's 4 times as big as what I currently have. The second point that is important to note about senators, if there are 40 senators in Massachusetts politics, and there's 200 representatives. So it's a smaller body. A lot of people talk about it being more progressive and being a body that comes with other important things. So for example, you get a bigger staff because you got to cover more land. You also get the chairmanship. I'm currently a vice chair in my, now going in my second term of a committee, but you get your own committee. And so you can actually drive the agenda on an issue that you care a lot about. So for example, cannabis, economic development, or mental health and trauma and addiction, which is something that we deal with in our community. And the last big difference, I think, you know, we had Senator Wilkerson, we had Senator Linda Forey, who I grew up with, who's also Haitian descent.
We also had the man who just passed away, who really established
Bill Owens.
Bill Owens, who was a mentor to me, and he broke the ice in so many occasions. And I mean, Bill Owens is a character in himself. That Bill Owens, I don't mean to take this away from you, told me once, while he went out with his wife and he was coming to Simcoe's to eat, to buy something before they head home.
Simcoe's hot dogs are definitely
from a concert.
A winner.
And he said to me that he was attacked back then. This was when the things were very tough in Mattapan, and black folks really didn't have that much access to that area. And he got into a fight, and the guy was trying to beat his wife. And as a man, he had to defend the wife, so he stabbed the man, and he ended up going to prison. But
I did not know that.
Yeah, this is, I mean, we had so much conversations that if I were to start telling you about it, it's going to be fantastic. But he went on and he got out. And so after serving his time, then he went on into Harvard and so on and so forth, established his business in the community and so on and so forth.
And the first black senator.
First black senator. And he said, thanks to Ed Markey, this is how this whole redistricting, Ed Markey really stood his ground and really said it was time for a black person to represent that
district.
That
Second
district.
Suffolk.
But I think he had a conversation with one other person in charge of, and I mean, who was one of the Speaker of the House, when he was presenting a case, and they were having a discussion with him. He said, listen, I went to the prison and to the State House, but you guys are going to be leaving in the State House and going to prison. And this happened.
You know, it's very interesting. You know, I had the chance to meet him and talk with him because I'd filed a reparations bill.
Okay.
So, and he gave me a lot of good wisdom because he actually was one of the senators who led that. And he actually was the senator who led that movement, not only here in Massachusetts, but across the country.
Exactly.
And, you know, you made me think about one more thing that I really would like to share to people. It's been really important for me. You know, you see the story about Senator Bill Owens, about how one moment in time he was incarcerated. And I firmly believe that we're not our worst mistakes. We're not the worst thing that's happened to us. We're not the worst thing that we've done. And what's incredibly important is that people, when they see people running for office, try to identify that you want someone real. You want someone relatable. You want someone that's going to help you and someone who will listen to you and call you back. And that's an important piece to share because I did not know that about his history, but I did know that he spent a lot of time going across the country sharing the need for reparations for black people. And I definitely believe in that for black people here. Well,
this is my buddy who has passed away, but he has left me with a lot of wisdom. He loves the Haitian people so much. He admired the history of the Haitians, as you have mentioned earlier. In spite of our agonies right now on this planet of Earth, paying the consequences of freedom for humanity.
Yes.
But however, someday the star will shine again. There's no doubt about it because we have shined in the past, and we will, in spite of what the enemy wants. What would you like folks to do for you in this upcoming campaign? How could they help you? What can they do?
So there's a couple ways. We're building a strong team right now. We're raising the funds necessary to run
the most important element, right?
People don't often talk about that. And I want to share it with people. When I first ran, my mom went to her hotel job and passed out envelopes to all the people in maintenance, housekeeping, and food service. And I got more $5 donations than I did 100 or 500. And I just want people to know that you do matter. whether you give $5 or $500, it goes a long way to show someone that you support them. They can go to lizmiranda.com, or they can call a phone number 617-602-8251.
Repeat that again.
617-602-8251. They can email votelizmiranda@gmail.com. And one thing that happens that my staff hates is people will inbox me. So you can, even if you're on Facebook or Instagram, you can inbox me as well. My team will respond, because I believe in meeting people where they're at. And our people are in community looking for leadership that will work with them. Because you mentioned that the fight for Haitian liberation and for humanity has impacted all of us. If it wasn't for the Haitian people, Toussaint L'Ouverture, and all the people that we know in history have made a difference, there would be no civil rights movement in America without Amilcar Cabral, without him. And so you have the diaspora. It's very important for us to keep this unified, that as people try to break down what is black and what isn't, that we come and say no, that we are all black people, our destinies are tied. And so I hope people would join me on this race. I have lots of Haitian American and Haitian people in support because they know that I've been here since day one. When the earthquake happened, I was one on the committee. I was on radio making sure that we got thousands and thousands of pounds of food and non-perishable goods to send to our brothers and sisters in Haiti. And so I will show up time and time again.
This is important, because the relationship between you and the people needs to be constant.
Yeah.
Will Liz Miranda change when she becomes a senator and she's wearing the big wig? Will we still find the same Liz Miranda?
Of course. I think people can say that now. I've been a representative for 3 going on 4 years, and people see me in community. I put a community-based office because I thought that was so important, because people weren't coming to the State House. I was like, well, let me just put my office on Dudley Street, and people come to talk about everything from immigration to housing to quarries to helping their children pay for their college education. So you're going to find me in community for community. Because that's who I am. I'm not going to run away. Even today, when I was coming here, I got 3 text messages from people needing letters or help. So I'm always going to be accessible, always be the type of leader that you can call on, even if we disagree. And this is really important, because disagreement is important to government. You're not always going to agree on all the same points, but if we can come together and build power and build community, I think we're on our way to have a senator that will always be from community for community.
I don't want to say this is the last one, but this is going to be only the first one.
Yep.
We'll have many more to do, because we're going to keep an eye on your campaign and see how you're going. Accessing to this television is open to you and to all to really educate and inform the community of what's going on. But my only trouble, I only seen politicians during the time of elections, and right after the elections I can't find them anymore. They don't want to come and be a guest anymore. They don't want to talk about the issue. They don't want to talk about the bills that they are, and so on and so forth. So will you promise that?
Pinky swear? You want to do a pinky swear?
She's the ideal candidate, and I'll tell you why. Because a pinky swear means a lot, and a lot for the future of this Commonwealth. It means a lot for the future of the city. A pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. The honor is all mine.
We want to wish you the best of luck, and we're always going to be positive in terms of our questioning, and want to know, just like every constituent needs to know. We'll dig into the information together with you, and hopefully you folks out there knows what's good for you. What's good for you is to really to stand behind somebody who has been there for you, somebody who understands what you are going through on a daily basis, because that's important. Because you cannot just elect somebody for the sake of electing them. You got to elect folks who are really going to represent you and really work hard with you. And he was not going to say goodbye after the elections, because they're going to be there for you. So she's one of them. Yeah. And I'll tell you, my son will attest to that, because they are good friends. The fashion designer have already dressed her up a couple of times. As you can see, the first question Liz asked me, have you Did he make a suit yet for you? No, he doesn't make suits anymore for the guys. He makes things
like
for the ladies. So we are closing up with Liz Miranda, and we surely will have her back some other time here at this program, which is The Bridge. We're here to educate you, to inform you, and to entertain you. That's the purpose of our life, and this is how we provide you with our servant capacity. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.
Thank you.
Mes amis, mais James, il était étonné pour l'apprendre que tension li gros. Ça qui a fait li fait tension. Qui donc, il était parlé avec docteur au sujet yon chimè qui bon pour santé pour ka baisser tension. Il était suspend fumer, ça qui fait une grosse différence dans gens qu'elle bat en général. Il diminue quantité sel tout et puis si veille étiquette sous manger qui indiquait gros quantité sel. En plus de ça, il marche 30 minutes 5 fois par semaine régulièrement. Tout bagage ça qui bon pour santé, pas de facile. Même baisser tension, t'es vos efforts si là. Joindre plus d'informations concernant chimè qui bon pour santé ça, pour joindre aide pour casser suspend fumer, relais 1-800 784 46 69.
Avant-garde. Nous devons toujours à l'avant-garde. Pour ou même qu'à l'avant-garde, consultez Jean-Claude Sanon n'importe qui est dans 617 839 71 91. Toujours à l'avant-garde avec Jean-Claude Sanon, nous offrons tout service immigration avec accident. Nous remplissons toute forme, nous mettons en forme. L'aide pour toute occasion ou circonstance, interprétation médicale légale, qu'un docteur dans l'hôpital, qu'un avocat dans le tribunal, sans compter immigration, traduction toute qualité papier, certificat, acte de naissance, de mariage, de décès.
Service de traduction, c'est même joie. L'aide pour demande de visa devant ambassade, discours, notaire public, officier d'état civil pour marier ou.
Real estate, vendre à acheter caille, mettre cérémonie pour toute occasion, c'est Jean-Claude Sanon, non affilié à un bureau avocat en Haïti qui travaille serré à Cachib national et tribunal. Service vite passé vent pour jugement acte de naissance tardive, acte de naissance tenant lieu, acte de décès, acte de divorce. Nous fait divorce tout sans qu'on pas besoin de payer ticket pour l'Haïti. Acte d'adoption, acte de mariage, civil ou religieux, extrait acte de naissance et de mariage rapide. Rapido presto, bon bagage sans problème devant immigration reconnu par l'État haïtien. Sans faux pas, consultez Avant-Garde. Jean-Claude Sanon dans 617 839 71 91.
Nous opérons seulement sur rendez-vous dans
Nouveau local, numéro 11 Rexford Street, Mattapan, Mass. Mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir et bienvenue à notre émission Forum communautaire. L'émission qui vous promet d'être toujours à l'avant-garde de l'actualité, la politique, l'économie, l'éducation, la science, la santé, la loi et le divertissement. Forum communautaire est une émission télévisée tous les dimanches de 4h30 à 5h30 sur Cuenca Vision, WCEA, chaîne 58, Comcast 729. Notre ambition, c'est d'être vos yeux, vos pieds ainsi que vos oreilles, espérant de partager avec vous le meilleur. Pour vos publicités, questions, commentaires et suggestions, consultez-nous au 617 839 71 91 ou par courrier électronique jean-claude_sanon@yahoo.com. D'ores et déjà, nous vous souhaitons une bonne audition. Nous allons passer à une courte pause publicitaire.